All right, guys, today we're going to talk about a missing persons case out of Bismarck, North Dakota. It was a mother and son that disappeared back November 16th, 1996. Their names were Sandra Jacobson and John Jacobson. Sandra was about 5'4" and 145 pounds, and John was, just a little 40-pound 5-year-old at the time. Sandra would currently be 64 years old, and John would currently be 34 years old. Sandra and John were last seen at 8 p.m. November 16th in the vicinity of the 1100 block of University Drive in Bismarck, North Dakota, as I mentioned, 1996. Sandra's home address was in Center, North Dakota. This was somewhat of a rural area. She was employed with the North Dakota Department of Transportation. She'd been married twice and just recently separated from her second husband roughly 3 months before her disappearance. She had another son named Spencer that was 16 at the time they disappeared. So on the evening Sandra disappeared, she had plans to go and have dinner at her parents' house. On her way from Center, North Dakota to Bismarck, North Dakota, she actually called the police and explained that she noticed a satanic ritual going on out at some rural farmhouse. And so this was odd behavior, very distressing, and showed some signs of mental illness. So Sandra continued on to her mother's house with her son John, and they went to Bismarck and ate at their parents'. And during dinner, her mother did mention that she was displaying some signs of mental illness. Sandra did have a history of mental illness, and this may come into play later on in the story. So, as we mentioned, she disappeared at 8 p.m. that night after leaving her parents' house. Her and John left her parents. As I mentioned, the address there, they basically were last seen there. The next day, her 1990 gray Honda Civic was found at Centennial Beach next to the Missouri River in Bismarck. Basically, the keys were still in it, her purse was still in there, everything was kind of still in there. A couple strange things that the police found was a gas receipt from a local gas station and some uneaten food from the gas station. It looked like she had filled up her car, which was not typical of someone who's planning on, ending their life. However, there was a small child's shoe found outside on the ground near the car that looked like it may have been John's. Now the police theorize they ended up in the river. I know that's a terrible, terrible ending. Basically the police sent out divers. Because this was November in North Dakota, it was very cold and there was some ice in the river. The Missouri River is a very wide river. I mean, it can be a mile wide or a half mile wide at some points. It's a very fast flowing, dark water, very dangerous river, not somewhere you'd want to go in November. So the divers weren't able to locate them. They weren't really able to do as good of a search as they probably would have liked to have done. It's just very challenging waters to search in general. There was an unconfirmed sighting of Sandra and John in War Road, Minnesota. However, it was unconfirmed. Nothing ever came of it. Since then, there has been no suspects named in the disappearance of Sandra and John, and they have since been declared legally deceased. In my opinion, I would say they most likely ended up in the river. I do hate to say it, because there was no signs of foul play in the car, and because there were the previous signs of mental illness, I think we all have to agree that that looks like it could be a possibility. However, being, a young, attractive woman, potentially, with 2 ex-husbands and that kind of thing. We don't know what she was into or what was going on. They could have been kidnapped. They could have ran away to live a new life. Really, we don't know. When a car is found by the river, in my opinion, and someone disappears, I think just like everyone, we think they are in the river and they've disappeared. However, if you or I wanted to disappear, maybe we'd park our car by a river because that's what people would think. So A lot of things to think about on this one. Generally, the most likely thing is what happened, but we don't know. You know, if we're ever out on the Missouri River around Bismarck, keep your eyes open for any signs of remains. I know I will. So thank you for following along. This is a very tragic case. Their family, Sandra's mother Bernice, deserves closure. Thank you for listening.